When I left school at 15, I went onto the railway working at Kirgate Station, Wakefield signal box ladder. Just off the platform there was a modern signal box with a concrete roof, and all the levers were little small ones like that. They're all small, big ones, but they're all small ones. And everything was recorded. And I was the bloke who recorded it, and we worked shifts. And in them days, they used to cycle it from Pontefract to Wakefield and back again, every day.
I took an exam, and that was the next step of the ladder, to becoming a fireman. He was the one that shows the coal onto the fire that creates the steam that moves the steam engine. So it was the fireman who did most of the work. My job was to create steam, and plenty of it. I signed at some ridiculous time in the morning while everyone was asleep, in all weathers as well. But I used to push bike it from Pontefract to Normanton. Sign on about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, a wintry morning. It's something I don't think would happen nowadays. But then you sign on, you take an engine off the shed, and you go to the shunting yards, and you pick up some empty coal wagons, and take them to whichever colliery, Castle Allop, Bywater, Welldale, even Peckfield, where you would bring full coal wagons back to Normanton. There's a technique to shoveling coal. You just don't throw it in. You've got to place it on the fire everywhere to get the most out of the coal. Some of the engines, coupled with the coal dust and all the oil on the engines, used to be a thick grime, and because you'd be crawling about the engine, overalls would be covered, and then you get on the bus. Well, happy days.
I think my first monthly wage was £75 or something like that.
I think mine each our factory was 60. I worked for Burberry's, so I did raincoats and your lining for
It used to be good because at Christmas you'd come home with a turkey, you'd got chocolate biscuits, you'd given all sorts, weren't
yeah,
you?
used to get a gift at Christmas.
Weren't there? There were the miners, there were the pits, because there was a pit, probably 5 pits every 5 miles. There were the sewing factories, there were at least 5 sewing factories around, and then there was all the sweet factories, and there was Ix and the Welsh.
Yeah.
So they were your 4 main. So either you had a job, so there's no reason to go to university.
You could go into nursing because they were at hospital.
So as well as working at the pit, and in later years moving on, I worked as a firefighter at Normanton Fire Station. Yeah, with the fire service, you got the good days and the bad days. But one I remember was there was 4 of us, and I was the driver, and we went to a dog stuck on a roof in Normanton on Castleford Road, and we went down and I drove, and the driver always stays with the vehicle. The other 3 lads went, they put the ladder up, they got the dog down. When they got back, the dog had bit one of them, it had pulled on the other one, and it had peed on the other one, and all I could do was laugh.
When I first left school in 1967, my very first job was at Double Two factory, but I only worked there for a fortnight. I worked a week and I couldn't hack getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go and get a bus to Wakefield and then a bus from Wakefield to the Double Two to start at 7 o'clock, I think it was, or 7:30. And I got a job then at a small shop in Normanton, which is no longer there, called Melia's, and that is a shop that people talk about quite often because it were your old type grocery shop, which you used to weigh your butter, cut your butter, weigh your butter, your cheese and everything.
When I actually left school, I was 14, because my birthday was the back end of July, so I didn't go looking for a job straight away because people couldn't employ her at 14 then. I wasn't allowed to work at the pit. I had that drubbed into me from being a small boy, that I'd had that many ancestors killed in the pits and badly injured in the pits, that as the same, my mother's 2 brothers, my uncles were in the same boat as me. They were brought up not to go to the pits. But, I mean, I didn't know how to get a job. I mean, So I went to Castlepid Labour Exchange, and they said, well, we've 2 jobs in the town. Shop assistants, one at Stylo Shoe Shop on Carlton Street, and one at Weaver to Wear men's tailoring shop on Carlton Street, and they were next door to each other. So I went to the shoe shop first, sat me down and interviewed me, and the shop manager said, right, well, you'll hear from us in a couple of weeks, I've got to report to my people. And when I walked out of there, I walked into the Weaver to Wear clothing shop next door, and the guy there interviewed me and said, you can start on Monday.
I was a telephonist. It was one of these plug. You'd sit there, a call would come, and you'd stick a plug in, say, good morning, National Coal Board, Whitwood office. How can I help? And then I'd have to put them through to whoever they wanted.
When I went for interviews, they said, well, I think you go to, when you're at school, they said, oh, you could work in an office. Apparently I was brainy enough to work in an office. And you know what frightened me? A phone. I was frightened to use a phone. And funnily enough, then I went to work at Boots. But then later on, I worked on railway, and I did a bit of switchboard work, and I loved it. I loved the switchboard work. Yeah. I just worked, first of all, I worked in what they call registration office, and drivers used to bring in the notes for the delivery or whatever, and we used to stamp them with a double stamp, and then apparently they used to file them, and then we used to have to go and look. Sometimes somebody would come and say, we can't, we haven't had this delivered, and you used to have to obviously check back to see if they had. We used to go through the pit yard and then catch the train at Altofts. We used to go in our wellies if it were winter. And you used to be able to leave him at station master's office, put your shoes on, go to work and come back and put your wellies on to come home again.
I left school at 15 years old, and I went to Normanton Brickworks. Normanton bricks we made 12,200 a day at Normanton, and Wakefield we made 18,500.
Really?
Yeah.
What, in one day?
Yeah.
So how many bricks in the firing then?
In the firing, the kiln held 12,000.
So you'd have to fill a kiln a day then?
Yeah, yeah.
For the Burnton?
Yeah. And they were fired for eight weeks. It went round in a cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, when I left school, I worked in a garage. I served petrol. I went to the garage, the Swan. There's a garage there now. You have to drive. You have to do it yourself now, don't you? But I went there. We pumped petrol. To say, can I have 6 gallons, please? Yeah, I'm talking. 25p a gallon. I mean, it was 5 shilling a gallon. That was expensive petrol. 5 shilling a gallon. That was really expensive. And then you could get it for a lot cheaper. But 5 shilling, what dearest petrol you could buy for a gallon of petrol? That's 25p. And this is before decimal, of course, because it was, normal money.
My mum worked at Gloucester's, my sister worked at Gloucester's, and I just walked into a job. It was a clothing factory. My mum used to do the inside leg, I did the outside leg, and my sister did the pockets. The worst trousers possibly to make was men's checked crimpline trousers. Were horrendous, because crimpline stretches. My mum could make anything. She made our clothes, she made our Whitsuntide dresses, she knit our cardigans. But it were good times, it were good work. A lot of women worked in factories, in sewing factories, in Altofts and in Normanton. Eventually my mother retired at 65. Everybody thought she was 60, she lied about her age. When she died, bless her, we had to say that we wouldn't put her age on the gravestone. When we had the gravestone put on, the stonemason phoned me and he said, "You haven't put your mum's age on stone." I says, "Oh no, I don't." I says, "Is it a problem?" He says, "No, you'll be surprised how many people do not have their age put on gravestones," which I thought was quite funny.